Hello, Chris.
Hello, Andy.
How are you?
I'm good. Yourself?
Good. You excited for this first episode?
I am indeed. Cannot absolutely wait. We are joined by two dogs.
Yeah, there's special guest dogs who are just joining us. Hello. Yes, so Highway to SNL. We're two British SNL fans.
Very rare.
Very rare indeed. Don't know who's listening, whether you're from the States, England, anywhere really. But we grew up with Saturday Night Live, but it was quite difficult to watch.
Yeah, I mean, the first time I got any idea of Saturday Night Live was the Wayne's World shorts that were put on to fill time.
Oh yeah, BBC Two.
On BBC Two, like 6 o'clock in the evening or something. Yeah.
So the skits were shown as almost like a TV series for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, before the news or something like that in the evenings. For me, it was around the same time, but I got into it through being a youngster watching Ghostbusters and then watching the Blues Brothers. So through the Blues Brothers, and there was video cassettes available of SNL. I had one I remember having was the 15th anniversary, which was a new release at the time. So 35 years ago. So I'm 43 now. So you do the maths, so to speak. And so that was the early 90s, and it was one of those shows that everyone talked about. Obviously, this was pre-internet then. But as time's gone on, more DVDs became available. We got best ofs. On Sky, there was the Paramount Comedy Channel. They showed reruns of the 80s episodes.
We were not a Sky family.
Okay, yeah. At first, I got people in school or sitcom thing was to record episodes onto video format.
Nice.
And then we did eventually get Sky, and then that channel stopped. It was a good comedy channel. That's where I first saw Spinal Tap and the Holy Grail through that as well. So
I'm much later to SNL, but knew all the people through films and stuff, and that's certainly what kind of. And then you do your research and you filter back and So why are we here, Andy? Rather than just jabbering on about why we remember SNL.
Well, basically, we want to go through a different sort of history of SNL. We're going to look at a different cast member each episode. Talk about why we're fans of this cast member, favourite sketches, and then the work they've done afterwards, and pick a few, if they've gone into films, a few of their favourite films each. Just talk about them and how. I think it's interesting for us because we love this show, but we know more of the people's work from what happened outside it.
Yeah. So
it's just basically a look at the show from a different level, from a different side, because we're not American.
Yep.
And we know their work. We're basically most of the cast members, apart from maybe the newer ones. We'd know them first and then go back and see the sketches after. With, like, say, Adam Sandler, I'd have first got into Adam Sandler through Airheads and Billy Madison, things like that, and then went back and watched Opera Man. You know.
Yeah, I think also SNL's oddity if there are American listeners out there, correct me if I'm wrong, but sketch comedy and that kind of thing, not so much of an American thing on TV, whereas in the UK it very much was. We had Python and Not the 9 O'Clock News in the 80s, and This Was the Week That Was.
Yeah, Goodies, things like
that.
Did you hear that dog play guitar there?
Amazing,
yes. But in this country, sketch comedy was rarely live. I mean, sitcoms were live back in the 60s, where it was more of a play on stage. Whereas, is that my phone?
That is your phone going off.
Oh my god. Right, it says likely nuisance. It bloody was. New phone. I'll turn it down. This is. We'll get all the. This is live. We have another reason we're doing this live.
It's whatever day of the week it is. It's not New York. It's Ipswich.
Yeah.
But this is live.
Live from Chris's flat.
Yeah. And it's not a flat. It's a house.
Oh yes. Well, it's upstairs.
Yeah, it's upstairs.
Yeah. Well, my flat is where we might record sometimes.
Well, yeah, indeed,
which isn't a house.
Yeah.
We for the first series of it, we've selected a few each, but there was a couple of cast members who we both chose.
Yeah, and certainly today's subject is one of those.
Yeah, one of the most famous people to come out of SNL, original cast member. We mentioned the Blues Brothers, we've mentioned Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
So Dan Aykroyd. And so much to say about this man. Bit of a legend, and still working to this day.
Yeah, it's definitely he's still making cameos, still doing his thing, still now selling vodka.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, definitely, as of them, the original cast that came out, obviously Chevy left after a season and a half and became the big movie star. But
yeah,
I think Dan Aykroyd is probably the one who is probably the biggest household name,
yeah,
still working.
Yeah, from that first series, definitely. Yeah. And I'd say nowadays, the bigger name than Chevy Chase, because he's still carried on working, and you've got, the Blues Brothers and Ghostbusters aren't just movies; they're franchises.
Yeah.
And it could be said that another franchise, I know there's only one movie, but Coneheads, animated series, things like that. But yeah, he was born in 1951, so he's getting on there. He is getting on.
Youngest cast member at the time.
He was, yeah. And we should mention Sleep with Lorne Michaels' wife. They knew all that different times, and they were experimenting in life as well as experimenting with comedy.
Indeed, that's they were experimenting with many things, shall we say?
Yes, and that's why. Yeah, I'm not going to go. But yes, so but he'd worked with Lorne Michaels before in a Canadian show in 1973 called The Hart and Lorne Terrific Hour.
Yeah, I know about it. I've not done anything about it.
And that was in 1973. He was a member of Second City as well in Canada, which I know really because of John Candy and people like that came out of that as well.
Yeah.
And one thing I thought, I didn't actually, I just had a quick look through. Did he work with National Lampoon before as well?
He wasn't one of the National Lampoons. He came from Second City. So he was Second City Canada and then Second City Chicago.
Yeah, because some done both.
Yes, yeah.
And then on Saturday Night Live from the first episode, one of the first people we saw on the screen, not the first, but was there, a member of the Not Ready for Primetime Players.
Indeed. Originally hired as a writer as well, and not as on-screen talent, but that quickly changed, I think.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, anybody talking to Dan Aykroyd probably realised he needs to be on camera.
Yeah, and just a character. If you've seen him in interviews, one thing I love about Dan Aykroyd is whatever topic he's talking about, he's enthusiastic about. Yeah, and you can tell it's genuine as well. It's not fake. There's no sarcasm there, unless he's playing a character talking about something. Yeah. Great on-screen presence, either acting or as himself, which is rare.
I think he's just a all-round interesting person. He's got so many interests outside of comedy. How he had time to fit in all the work he's done and all the writing he's done and all the rest of it, and all his other polymathic, I don't know if that's a word, interests. So his interest in the paranormal, his interest in music, interest in UFOs, all of that kind of stuff.
And as well as the executive producer's wife, there was Carrie Fisher, Donna Dixon. Yeah, very busy man.
He was
very active man.
Very active man in the bedroom, for my sake.
Yes, but also one of the most liked.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard anyone say a bad word about him in interviews, which is also something quite rare for cast members of that time.
Cast members in general, I think, throughout time.
Yeah, and he's worked with a lot of SNL cast members. Still works. I mean, only a couple of years ago, he'd done a kids comedy movie called Zombie Town with Chevy Chase, who is one of those cast members who people have said is difficult to work with. Chevy Chase has worked with Dan Aykroyd a lot over the years. Yeah. After that, I mean, he was Spies Like Us, Nothing But Trouble, Caddyshack 2.
Yeah.
And then there's new ones. I assume they're friends.
I've heard Chevy say that Dan Aykroyd is the nicest man in the world.
Yeah.
And for Chevy Chase to say something like that,
it's
quite a thing, because he's not usually that nice about anybody.
But I will just quickly say, hopefully at some point we'll do a show on Chevy Chase, but I think a lot of the stuff about Chevy Chase is his humour being misunderstood. I think Dan Aykroyd totally gets his humour. Yeah. But more recently as well, he's worked with Adam Sandler in the last 20 years and appeared in a lot of his movies. Yeah. And they clearly get on well. And he's someone who, when we talk about some of his sketches, he's got this presence, but he'll never try to steal a scene. He can work other people's comedy. Yeah. And I think that's one thing he's great at. It's like he will step back and allow. I mean, if you look at his work originally with John Belushi.
Mm.
John Belushi was just this force. And he worked so well with Aykroyd because Aykroyd knew when to rally in, let him do his thing. But then also, I think he knew how to calm him and then get on with the sketches. And I think he got him through the making of the Blues Brothers anyway.
Yeah, you sometimes think that was a miracle that film ever actually ended up getting made.
Yeah. But a movie that actually didn't do that well at the time.
No.
And it's become a real cult hit. I mean, they worked... should we just talk about his early film career with John Belushi for a bit? Because
yes, yeah.
the first movie they'd done together, I'm not sure they were on screen together, was 1941, which really bombed. The Spielberg, you've done Jaws, let's give you all the money in the world.
Yeah.
It gets a great cast, it's an over-the-top slapstick war comedy, which I think is quite enjoyable, but it is a mess.
Yeah.
And then they're both in that. And Belushi especially was sort of in the reviews of one of the better things about it. Mm. Then they'd done the Blues Brothers.
Yeah.
That cost lots of money. At the time, I think a lot of people thought that film was a bit of a mess as well because it was different.
Yeah.
Now it's a 2+ hour musical comedy with lots of car chases, loads of cameos, and at the time, a lot of musicians who had probably faded away were not. You got to think that when that was made. It was the tail end of disco, and punk was a big thing. And they're making a film with all these blues musicians aimed at a young audience. Mm. But a lot of the audience loved it. And it's grown and grown and grown into this... it's if you had to pick pick 5 cult movies, that'll be in it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And they released 2 albums. The first one, Briefcase Full of Blues, got to number 1.
Yeah.
Live album recorded... when they were supporting Steve Martin at a big either arena or stadium concert, and they had released the second album, Made in America. Then I think it was the soundtrack. Then it sort of died down a bit after the film didn't do so well, and they made a different kind of dark comedy called Neighbours, where they kind of reverse roles. Dan Aykroyd played the hyper character, and John Belushi played the serious, restrained. It's an interesting film. When I first watched it when I was younger, I didn't quite get it, but when I watched it probably 10 years ago, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I thought it was different, and I think they'd have carried on working together. Maybe not just together, because I think Aykroyd went off to do Dr. Detroit around that time and some other stuff. And John Belushi done Continental Divide, so I think they'd have carried on working because he doesn't seem to fall out with anybody. So I think they, and John Belushi's another one who did fall out with people a lot. Jane Curtin.
Just any female cast member, I think. Or crew person, or
apart from Gilda Radner.
Gilda Radner got him the job.
Yeah. So
actually stuck up for him on several occasions. But
So that's the early film career of Dan Aykroyd. I don't think we should just go through because he's done a lot.
Yeah.
Should we talk about the films and go back to the sketches?
Yes, why not? So our frame of reference, like I said, is his films, and then we discover the sketches afterwards. So
we'll take turns, shall we? And did we say we'll pick 3 films?
I only have the 2.
Okay,
but because I know you bagged the good one. I should clarify, we're not going to rehash anything and talk about Blues Brothers and Ghostbusters because that's been talked about enough by a lot of people.
I think when you say I bagged the good ones, I think I'm not sure you know what ones I picked.
Oh right, okay, maybe I haven't.
But do you want to go? We'll take turns and we'll see.
Yeah. You shoot ahead because you're free. So
okay, so I mentioned it before. 1993's Coneheads, another movie that bombed. But great director Steve Barron, who done the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. Which
you're not selling it by that, are you?
Oh come on, that's a great one. At the time, that was the biggest independent movie ever made. Jim
Really?
Henson, it was. I think it's great, and he's also done since Mike Bassett, England manager.
Amazing film. That film is amazing.
He still lives in London, I think, and sometimes shows. He's definitely shown the Turtles movie and done talks on it and stuff. But co-written by Bonnie and Terry Turner, who co-wrote Wayne's World with Mike Myers, or some would say Mike wrote it. But anyway, and then they've done Third Rock from the Sun after that. Fish Out Water comedy. They've taken the sketches, a lot of the same jokes used or moderned up. Fantastic cast, probably the most Saturday Night Live cameos in any movie.
It's probably the most cameos in general of any movie.
You've got Jane Curtin resurrected the role. Lorraine Newman's in it as a character, but she's too old to play the daughter now. Garrett Morris. There's loads of them up until that point. But just funny constantly. I think so. There's so many jokes, and there's more hits than misses. Great performance, and it could show us what Chris Farley could act.
Yeah,
and it's another of Dan Aykroyd, who I think was probably the chief almost joke writer on this movie, and then the other two would have done the story. But it's another one where he plays the serious kind of, and he steps back, and a lot of the humour is people's reaction to him. And he gives this. I think it's an amazing performance of this straight-laced alien. It's just such a ridiculous film. Now it did flop, but there's several reasons for this. Mainly, I think, because the characters were nearly 20 years old when they made the film.
Yeah,
and it was made probably it was made off the success of Wayne's World, and they were churning the films out. And I just don't think the audience wanted it. They wanted the newer characters. But it's another one that's remembered fondly. And I read somewhere, it might not come out in the UK, but there's definitely a special edition Blu-ray on the way.
Ooh.
So I'll be purchasing that. So it's another one you like as well.
Yeah, I do like it. I think Chris Farley is just outstanding.
Yeah,
outstanding in it, and just all of the cameos. I think they're not just cameos for cameo's sakes. I think they've all had a part to play and a bit to.
And it's the funniest you'll ever see Tom Arnold.
Yeah. Oh, you are really winding me up to say some things in this podcast.
It's not on purpose this time.
No,
when we've done other podcasts.
There is a tradition. Today Andy does try and get me to say quite horrific things. So no doubt that will happen eventually. But yeah. So yeah, you were talking about the straight-laced character. I think Dan Aykroyd did two characters. He did all characters mentally, but two characters incredible. And I'll talk about them quite a bit during this podcast, but it was the straight-laced character or the slime ball. And so the two films I've picked are one of each.
I bet I can guess them just from that.
Are one of each. The first one I want to talk about is Dragnet, which is one of the films I most fondly remember from seeing when I was a child. Completely not old enough to get the jokes I was at the time, but there was enough in there that I did enjoy. And as a child, and there's a lot of slapstick and a lot of silliness, and you know the dance with the goat legs and all the rest of that. And I just think it is a superbly funny film. I think it paved a way for something that we're a bit more used to now. In that, if you don't know, Dragnet started as a radio drama in the 50s. Then became a TV show, and then another TV show, and then a couple of films, and then they rebooted it as another TV show, all led by one guy, I can't remember his name, who created it, who also played the main character. Friday. Joe Friday, who is the uncle in universe. So this is actually even in universe to the original Dragnet canon.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a straight-laced procedural, and it's the first show that would have been called a procedural crime drama. We're used to that word procedural crime dramas now, like The Bill, and it's cops doing cop work and not action or adventure. And Dan Aykroyd, huge fan for the film. Allegedly, there was going to be a film made in '82, but it fell apart because the original creator died. So I'm guessing that was Dan Aykroyd in this film was already in the works of being made, so he stepped in and came and co-wrote it with an SNL co-writer, and I've now forgotten who the other another writer who'd written 3 Bond films. Also directed it because the director dropped out or was fired, so it was his only one of 2 directorial films he did. It's just a brilliantly funny, silly film, but so clever. Dan Aykroyd's acting as Joe Friday, the straight-laced procedural cop who speaks at an incredible speed, it's enormous sentences, and it's like listening to music. It's just absolutely beautiful, and Dan Aykroyd is the master of that. I'll talk about one of his sketches, which is the same, but how he could deliver these words. I talk quickly, but Dan Aykroyd can just say stuff so quickly and so eloquently, and it's just like a rhythm. It's like rap. I won't talk about rap because there was a rap hit. It wasn't a hit. And yeah, it's just it's a pastiche of a classic, and we've seen it like most recently with Jump Street.
Yep.
And then Brady Bunch,
Baywatch. Yeah. Basically a homage, but they make it more of a comedy. It's like a spoof, but laughing with it, not at it.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, definitely. I'm pretty sure it's the first of that kind. But I think it was kind of overshadowed at the time by Naked Gun. It was around the same time, wasn't it? And Naked Gun's the sillier film.
Yeah.
But in many ways, they're as good as each other because they're different types of comedy. And we haven't even mentioned that Tom Hanks is the...
No, you're talking Tom Hanks, the star on the rise, very much at that point. He had 2 big hits, Splash and The Money Pit.
Yep.
The following year, he made Big.
Yeah, so Oscar nominated for that. And he's the rebellious rookie cop.
Who you might as well say the Belushi character.
Yeah. And he does a fine job. And this film was a hit. It wasn't huge, but it certainly, I think, partly helped Hanks. It showed his range in sillier comedy, which he was doing at the time.
Yeah.
Probably his wackiest role since... Well, up to that point, probably anything, because he was in the wacky comedy Bachelor Party, but he was quite straight-laced in that. He was the one getting married and it was all happening to him. Whereas in this, he's the wild card. Yeah, so I think it's a great film.
Yeah, and I think the writing in it, you can tell Dan Aykroyd's writing style a mile away. I always think I can. That, just the way he puts words together, the scene I made you think of, it's not his scene, it's the scene with the landlady when she's describing the guy who's Zorb from Superman 2, calls him a piss bucket. It's just absolutely incredible writing and just like silly words put together in such a way that just it's just funny, immediately funny. Yeah,
and I think fans of the old show would appreciate it too.
Yeah.
So I remember as a kid, my dad loved it, and he'd have watched the old show. So yeah, cool. Next one.
Yes.
Right, this is a controversial one. From 1981, the only movie he directed, and he wrote it as well, Nothing But Trouble. Well-renowned super bomb. He actually won the Razzie for Worst Supporting Actor that year, which I think is a disgrace. Story by his brother Peter Aykroyd. I don't know, have you actually seen this?
I have not seen it.
Okay, so he's only in it because the actor, he plays the mayor under a lot of makeup. And look, he's got an extended cameo. The star of the movie is Chevy Chase. Debbie Moore's the girlfriend, which she should have got Oscar nominated for this. I don't know. Anyway, and John Candy plays 2 roles. It's basically, to sum it up, it's like an Abbott and Costello movie meets Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think it's a 15 certificate. It's not that effective, but it's dark, and it's like the inbred type villains. 2 packs in it. It's just this mad film. I think it's tonally ahead of its time. I think if it was released now with more acceptance of darker humour, I think it would have been a big hit. It didn't even, its original name was Volcavania or something like that. It's a different name. But I think being sold as Nothing But Trouble sounds like a screwball comedy.
Yeah.
And I reckon that was studio interference changing it because of the cast. All I can say for this movie is, if you like your darker comedy, give it a go. The performances are good. The jokes work. A lot of the jokes work anyway. It's not the bomb that people... it was a bomb, but it's not the disaster people say. And I think it's a shame that it didn't do well because he hasn't directed anything since. And I think it really hit his career. But it would be nice. It's already a bit of a cult movie. If over time this got bigger and more people began to appreciate it. So I like it, and I recommend to any listener who hasn't seen it, give it a go.
I'll be checking it out.
Yeah.
I've heard about it. It's always one of those things that gets brought up in conversations around biggest flops or weirdest films made and stuff like that. So
it's well worth a watch just for how weird it is, but you will laugh at it. And that's the point of a comedy, isn't it? Yeah.
So next up for me is, again, I said he's great at playing straight-laced, great at playing sleazeball characters, and so The Great Outdoors, which again is a film I remember as a child. Most I remember, why are they shooting a bear with a lamp? But in that, if you were to, when was that? 88?
88,
88, it was 88.
I think it's 88, yeah.
So in 88, you see a film poster, it's got Dan Aykroyd and John Candy, and immediately you're thinking, right, Dan Aykroyd's the straight-laced, and John Candy's going to be the crazy one. We've seen it all before. We saw it with Belushi and when John... but it's not. It's the other way around.
Yeah, yeah.
And it just shows Dan Aykroyd's versatility. That, as you said before, he can play up to somebody else.
Yeah.
And Candy is the star of the film, but Aykroyd's not trying to steal it away, even though that's a role that could easily still stolen the film.
Yeah, and
it's the funnier role, but
yeah. But he as well in that movie, he is the slimy, he's the yuppie era as well.
Yeah.
But he needs to the way the film goes. You actually need to feel for him and like him, and a lot of actors would have just made it a nasty character and you couldn't emphasise. But with his performance, you do.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, it could have easily gone the opposite way and just been no payoff for his character.
Yeah.
But he's there is a certain amount of tragedy and everything in his performance, and I think when you watch it again, and certainly I suppose with more adult eyes, but I would have seen it years ago. But you watch it again and think about the ending where he is, you can see the nuances in his performance earlier in the film betraying what's underneath.
Yeah. It's a really well loved film actually. Was John Hughes involved?
John Hughes wrote it.
Right, yeah. I didn't know if it was John Hughes or Chris Columbus. So
it's John Hughes.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that. A bit of vacation in there. Obviously, they do go on holiday in the film, but a lot of slapstick humour, some good one-liners, and it's them bouncing off each other.
Yeah.
It's an odd couple, isn't it?
It is. And as much as they try and make out it's a family comedy, it is because they're brothers, but you would think it's going to be like any other number of films that were made around that time about a dad and a mum and the family, and then other people outside that family, but it's all about the dad and the kids and the mum, and it's not. It's about two brothers.
Yeah.
And reconciling, I guess.
Yeah. Were they brothers or brother-in-laws? They were brothers, isn't it?
I think they're brothers.
Yeah, I've not seen it for a while. I lent the DVD to someone.
Yeah.
And I didn't get it back I've just got it back, actually. I should have read the warnings telling you not to lend them.
Yeah.
It is illegal.
Yeah.
I've broken the law.
And also, if you like bears having the hair shot off their bum.
Yes.
It's great.
Yeah.
And raccoons. There's raccoons.
This is raccoons, yeah. It's one of those films where it's there's a nice plot going on, but there's sketchy moments in it, as in you could take certain scenes of this and it would work as a comedy sketch. So it's a bit like Adam Sandler's Grown Ups, but with a plot. Yeah.
and Les Schneider.
Yeah. We all need Les Schneider. Shall we agree on him not to do an episode on him?
I think we should agree now. We're not going to do an episode on Rob Schneider and his horrific right-wing views.
I've just had a message through from Rob Schneider saying, you can do it.
We'll have to make some copies of that.
Okay, right. So should I move on to my...
Yes, please.
My third choice, another movie that, I don't know if you've seen this one, from 1987, The Couch Trip.
I have not.
Okay, so The Couch Trip's based on a novel by Ken Cole of the same title. It co-stars Walter Matthau, Charles Gordon, and Donna Dixon. And I think that might be where he met Donna Dixon. No, they
met on
Dr. Detroit. Dr. Detroit. So his wife at the time, Donna Dixon. The simple premise is he is in a mental institution, and his psychiatrist, who he doesn't get on with, is supposed to temporarily take over on a big radio psychiatry show, and he trades places with him, and he does it.
Right.
And Walter Matthau recognises him as being a patient, and comedy ensues. Now, it isn't the sort of film you'd make now, for reasons, but it's less offensive than Loose Cannons, the one he done with Gene Hackman.
Yeah.
But his performance is great in it. He does a lot of the fast talking you mentioned earlier. It's well written. Charlie Gordon is fantastic as the uptight psychiatrist. Walter Matthau gives a hilarious comedy performance. There's a cameo from Victoria Jackson from SNL, who'd have been in it at the time as well. As I say, because of the subject, but you had a lot of comedies in that era, like Crazy People and Dream Team and things like that. I think because of it's set around the mentally ill, you wouldn't do it now. You've got to take it for the context. Very funny film. He carries the film. There's other comedy out supporting, but there's no co-star. It's his film. And I just think it's one of those forgotten little gems. I called it late night on TV as a kid. I think my dad might have recorded it and said, watch this. Chevy Chase has a very brief cameo as well, actually. So how many times did they work together? So yeah, it's just a forgotten one. It did get in the UK a Blu-ray release a few years ago. I couldn't get a copy actually, but there's a DVD circulating. You could probably stream it, but do give it a watch. Not much more to say apart from it's one of those. I don't want to spoil the plot because it's one not many people have seen.
Yeah.
But he's great in it, and that's the. I thought he was going to go for Trading Places.
I thought you were going for Trading Places. So we should briefly talk on Trading Places. I think we should because it's I think probably one of the biggest comedies of the 80s.
Yeah. His second film, John Landis.
Yeah.
It was the second film for Eddie Murphy. Before after 48 Hours, just before he really broke with Beverly Hills Cop. Basically the Prince and the Pauper, isn't it?
Pretty much.
Moderned up, really funny. I watched it recently. Has dated a little bit, but come on, it's over 40 years old. Jamie Lee Curtis' first comedy appearance, first nude scene.
Of course, you threw that in there.
That's what it's famous for now. Everyone knows that. Fantastic classic comedy.
Yeah, I think really dark, but really funny as well. But like not dark as in a depressing way. It's always light-hearted, despite being quite dark.
Yeah.
At times, and the themes, which some of we're probably going to say that things are dated quite a lot in this podcast in general. I think we can all deal with no one's getting cancelled or anything like that. It's a thing of its time, isn't it?
We say that just after we cancelled Rob Schneider from.
We did just cancel Rob Schneider, yeah, but that's different.
But we'll be mentioning him, and some of his stuff was all right.
Yeah.
It's a classic, and maybe. That's one of the movies like Ghostbusters and Blues Brothers most people would have seen, so you have to mention that much. Before we get on the sketches, though, what I did want to mention is some notable cameos and not so notable cameos that he's been in.
Yeah.
Because if you look on Letterboxd, I think the second movie to come up with him is Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom.
Yes, of course. The man on the plane.
Yeah.
Greets him onto the plane.
It took me forever to spot that when I was younger. But he's in Casper, bringing back Ray from Ghostbusters very briefly. Chaplin's a good cameo. And he's in the Twilight Zone movie as well. Also with...
Evolution. He was the mayor in Evolution.
Every Adam Sandler film, pretty much. And then more serious ones like Pearl Harbor he's in. But a movie that we should mention is a supporting role. In Driving Miss Daisy, and he got Oscar nominated.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. I don't know who won that, but Dan Aykroyd should have won that year. So, have you seen that one?
I have.
Yeah. I've seen it once, a long time ago. I remember liking it, but I was probably too young for it.
Again, probably same here. Actually, it probably is worth a rewatch. Now I probably understand it, but I probably thought when it first came out.
Yeah, I was like, Daddy, is that him from Robin Hood, Prince
of
Thieves?
Weren't that young.
I was born in 1985. No, but I think I watched it around the time of Prince of Thieves coming out.
Yeah,
I'd been about 10, 11. So I'm slow when I. So well worth watching. I also, I didn't write down the name of it. I didn't realise he starred in a Woody Allen film as well. Is it the Scorpion of something?
Oh, the Curse of the Jade Scorpion.
Yeah, I'd never seen that.
Neither have I, because it's late Woody Allen. So.
Well, 80s, so late Woody Allen. But I might give it a go because he's in it. But they only worked together once, which says it all. So his film work is pretty outstanding when you think about it.
I think probably he's got the largest film resume of any former SNL cast.
Yeah. And
obviously he had the head start because he was one of the first, but
and mixed genres as well.
Yeah.
He's done lots of comedy, horror, drama, period pieces, everything. So should we get on to the sketches?
Let's go on to the sketches.
So, do you want to go first this time?
Oh yeah. So which one to pick? I'm going to go talk about this one first. So this is it's two sketches because he revived it slightly. Three actually, because he did it in the 40th anniversary. Bassomatic. I think, if anything, this sketch sums up how blinking weird the first series of SNL was, and the first few seasons after that. I mean, you watch it now, and SNL now has a formula and You know, you think of 90s SNL and you think of the bad boy period and you think of very clear sketches and jokes, and then a lot of politics was in the 80s. And then now it's lots of spoofing of people and a lot more impressions you see now and that kind of stuff. But in the early days, it was just mental.
Yeah.
It's just the opening sketch. Wolverine. It's a guy copying another guy, and then he dies, and then the other guy falls over. But he's teaching him the word Wolverine in a different language. It doesn't make sense. And Bassomatic just doesn't make sense, but it's brilliant. It's a blender for blending fish. And then the follow-up sketch, which I think is more to Dan Aykroyd's heart, Batomatic, where he's a wizard and he's released the Batomatic, which can blend a bat. No more dicing with mess important your bat needs in your potions. And that strange cutaway, that's good bass.
The Ray Newman just top form.
Again, he's quick talking. That probably would have been the first time that anyone would have seen him do that, and that fast talking salesman pitch. I just think it is an absolute piece of insanity, but it's a thing of beauty and sums up Dan Aykroyd, I guess, as a solo performer rather than as a sketch player. Yeah. It's very much a monologue, isn't it? But it just shows off his immediate talent. And the thing, he was the youngest member of the cast at that time, and that immediately puts him. I don't know. He has a maturity of his comedy and a level above a lot of other performers, I would say.
Yeah.
That alone, and that's Bassomatic.
Bassomatic, that is a classic. And them ads they've done, that's the one that stands out as well. There's a lot of funny ads they do. Yeah. But that's probably the most iconic. So I'm going to start with. We mentioned the Coneheads, so I want to mention at least one of those sketches because I think they're great. I think the film really works, but for little 5-10 minute sketches, it's genius because it's just non-stop humour. The one I want to mention, At Home with the Coneheads, the second At Home with the Coneheads, the sketches run from 77 to 79, and the one with Steve Martin, and Steve Martin comes around to basically catch him out for being aliens. And it's just a ridiculous We're from France is where it all started, and Steve Martin's reaction and the whole, they're drinking beer 6 cans at a time, throw chicken embryos and eggs, and it's just, that's the sketch. If you've not seen any Coneheads, go to that. It's At Home with the Coneheads. I did write this series from February 26th, 1977.
Oh, you got the actual episode.
I haven't for every sketch I've picked.
See, he's the organised one.
So yeah, that's the first. Because I talked about the film, there's not much to say, but you can see how the characters were. It worked straight away. It wasn't like the Czechoslovakian brothers where it took a few sketches to get going. That was good from the outset. Yeah,
I think we can. The Czechoslovakian brothers have a lot to answer for. Because for me, they are one of that one joke thing that led to a lot of other one joke things that continued in future SNLs, like making copies. I'm sorry, Schneider, I'm bringing you up again, but it's like when they've clicked on one thing, and then they just keep making a sketch based around it.
But it was a good joke.
It was a good joke. No, it was a good joke. But I think they've got a lot. Whereas Coneheads, I never thought Coneheads was like that. Coneheads was always original every time. It was just
that's a criticism the film got of having a one joke film. But if the one joke is a fish out of water, there's so much you can do with it. It's not one joke; it's lots of jokes.
Yeah,
you know. But I suppose with the Czechoslovakian brothers, there was a bit of that. But the first sketch of that bombed completely, and that you watch it and there's not much love. And they brought it back because Steve Martin come back. And that second sketch with Garrett Morris coming around, and they're waiting for the two women to show up who you don't think are going to show up, and they do. That is, I should have put that in this. That was a perfect sketch, I think. But then they just done the same thing every time Martin was back.
Yeah.
So anyway, your sketch next.
Sketch next, right? So, I think another. Was he reoccurring? I don't even know. I think he reoccurred a few times, but only one way to introduce it. Fred Garvin, male prostitutes. I think it's 7 minutes long, which is long for an SNL sketch as well. I wish it had the guest host in as well.
That was
the original was
Margot Kidder, wasn't it?
Yeah, Margot Kidder.
Yeah.
And it's an opposite side to Dan Aykroyd. He's just brilliant character work. It just escalates and escalates and escalates. You've already got this silly premise that this woman's place of work has hired a male prostitute for the evening to roger her senseless from
Roger her roundly.
Roger her roundly from 8 p.m. until 7 a.m. I believe.
Yeah.
And then it just escalates. Like, that's funny immediately, and just her trepidation about it is funny.
Yeah.
And then it escalates to he's doing poses on the bed, the snake. He then has like 4 different girdles.
Yeah. Then the pimp shows
And then the pimp shows up.
Yeah. And then she has to pretend that she's had a good night, even though they couldn't get the girdle off. But for me, what makes that sketch is the weird music and him just, every time he says his name, he turns to the camera, looks at it seductively, and then the name flashes up. It's just ridiculous.
It's brilliant fourth wall breaking. I think it always, when I watched it, it made me immediately think of Don't You Mean the Virgin Connie Swales?
Oh, yeah.
Dun, 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 and it's exactly the same thing.
Yeah. We used to, in high school, we used to shout, sort of quoting this on the playground, which is weird, because, why didn't we get told off? Probably because the teachers knew the sketch and found it funny.
Has it dated? I don't think it has particularly. I think it's maybe not everyone's obvious sense of humour. I guess it's quite out there and wacky, but I just absolutely
the only thing I'd say was dated about it, because obviously stuff like this still happens, so you can still do the sketch, but then they probably exaggerate for the sake of humour. Is the over the top Garrett Morris pimp? Yeah, is a stereotype, but other than that. And maybe you could play on that more and make it more of a joke, I suppose. So, not really.
No. Yeah.
So, but that's one that I'd have picked if you didn't. So, I knew you would. So, well, you don't count it, haven't I? So, my second choice is from December 9th, 1978.
Oh, he's got the facts out. He's got the facts.
The French Chef, where he plays Julia Charles. If you don't know, that was a TV chef in the 70s. And the sketch where she cuts the dickens out of her finger. So basically, cooking on air, and fake blood goes everywhere, builds up, and she dies on screen. And then pops her head up again and says, once again, save the liver, which is what she was saying. Now, this came about by the real chef was going on live TV and cut her finger just before she went on air, not long before that, and they plastered up. She didn't want anyone to mention it, whatever. So she was just brave. So they totally exaggerated it. But the fake blood is so ridiculous because there's so much fake blood. It's like something out of Evil Dead. He does a really high pitched female, he's like almost Terry Jones from Python voice, and it's quite a short sketch. But it's hilarious. It's a one joke sketch, but it goes on and on and on to the point of Little Britain never came close on this with that sort of humour. I think it's one of the perfect sketches, and Julia Charles herself actually found it really funny.
What year was it?
78.
So that reads to me like a Schmeigel set sketch, and Schmeigel would have been writing for them about then.
Well, according to, if you go by the Saturday Night Film, they imply that it was meant to be in the first episode. But I don't know if that's true because they've mixed things up. But it's Al Franken.
Oh, Al Franken.
And who's his comedy writer?
I cannot remember his name.
Yeah, we should know that. But it was
we should know that, yeah.
According to Saturday Night, it was those two wrote it for Aykroyd, but probably with him. And I think that probably was something they wanted to... Well, that's why it doesn't work out with the film, because it said not long before she cut her finger. If it's
as well Al Franken also wasn't one of the original writers, so I think they probably brought
but he was there that first night and done bits, so
it's spoiling the fact that I've not seen the film.
Yeah, sorry, but but I think he was there, and then he'd done his own little weird bits with his comedy partner, and then became a writer. So she found it hilarious, and they sent her a copy of the video of it for the time so she could rewatch it. So I think that's great, because I didn't know that till I researched. I thought, did this offend the person? It was because she dies on telly, but apparently she found it there, and the fact that she died, she thought was hilarious. So I think that's great.
There's something that SNL have continued to do throughout the years is comedy blood. They love gallons of comedy blood.
Yeah, don't we all?
Yeah.
So Yeah.
Also groundbreaking moment for this series. Will be the first time we talk about Weekend Update. And yeah, probably, well, this is certainly open for debate, which I am going to debate on the side for this, as whether you could do this today, as I always say.
Point counterpoint.
Point counterpoint. Point counterpoint with Jane, you ignorant slut. I think it is probably one of the most laugh out loud sketches ever. Mm-hmm. Just where that line comes from is incredible. You've got this brilliant premise of a female liberal, well-educated, well-knowledgeable person putting forward a brilliant argument against misogyny and against male dominance and the rest of it. And then what does the man do? His only response is call her an ignorant slut, and then spend about 30 seconds deriding her and all of womankind. And that's why it's funny. It's not funny because it's misogynistic. It's funny because the joke is that's the best a man can do. Is turn to misogyny.
And also I think works with that sketch is after he says his piece, they shake hands and then they're all friendly with each other. So it's it's one of those things of you need it to be offensive for the joke to work. So therefore, I'm fine with it. I think and I think it really works. It being Jane Curtin, the most mature and almost strongest presence of the female cast. If it had been Lorraine Newman or Gilda Radner who would play the more childlike characters, or that it wouldn't have had the same effect. So I think it's another near perfect.
And I think also you've got to give hats off to Jane Curtin when she was playing those characters. As much as she was great in other sketches and Coneheads, but when she was playing just her doing Weekend Update. People forget she was the first female Weekend Update host. She took straight over after Chevy Chase.
It was her and Aykroyd, wasn't it? They done it together.
She did it on her own for a couple of episodes as well after that. So she was the first ever solo female host, following people who consider the best being Chevy Chase. I would disagree. More to that coming up. You've got to keep listening to this for the next few months. And she's just played those roles with such, authority and maturity, and so straight. If someone was to do that now in modern SNL, certainly in 2000s SNL, there would be some corpsing going on. But I think a lot of that come out of she was more serious in real life. And a lot of their childish behaviour, especially with Belushi, she was probably so annoyed that she couldn't laugh. But with Aykroyd, the closest she comes to it are the bits with Aykroyd. If you look at her face, it's that. And I think those two, with that and Coneheads, another comedy duo that he was part of. You think about it, 'cause you've got those two, him with Belushi, him with Chevy Chase later. John Candy done 3 films with, was it? 3 films,
So he just works well with people, and that's why he's great in comedy teams. And the next sketch that I'm going to mention is also with Jane Curtin. From season 3, episode 4, 1970, where he plays Irvin Mainway in the Halloween costumes episode. Sketch, sorry. Jane Curtin is a presenter of a current affairs type show, and she's brought on Irvin to talk about the Halloween costumes he's released at Halloween that she thinks should be banned. Shall I say some of the costumes?
Go for it.
Okay, so there's Space Commander, which is just a plastic bag to put over your head. Johnny Combat action rifle costume, which is a real rifle. One of my favourites, Johnny Human Torch, bag of oily rags and a lighter, and the Invisible Pedestrian, which she is just basically a black bin bag. And she has a go at him for saying, it's dangerous, kids could get run over, whatever. And his argument is kids aren't stupid, they'll stick to the sidewalks, and it's not like any blind kids are going to wear it. Then he turns to the back and there's a big warning label saying not for blind kids, which is another one. Would you do it now? Possibly not, but it's that ridiculousness. The humour just works so well. He's this one of the first sleazeball characters he played. They brought this character back a few times for other.
Yeah.
You mentioned one before.
Yes, he's a toy manufacturer, and he has his best-selling toy bag of glass, which is it teaches kids refraction and reflection. It's educational.
Yeah. I love that character. Another one, like I say, with Jane Curtin, just amazing sketches. And when you think. I think we go with all SNL. They have the ideas, but the show they start on a Monday and it's on air on a Saturday.
Yeah.
So a lot of the way it works still to this day, I suppose, is when a good character when it takes off, it's easier for them to bring them back.
Yeah.
So with characters like that, Coneheads, many he done. I'm so glad that he had those characters because if they repeated. Ones that just weren't as good, like a lot of the later cast did.
Yeah.
These characters aren't remembered.
Yeah.
So fantastic. And from that first 5 years, amazing. But was Aykroyd? One thing I want to say did Aykroyd leave after the fourth year?
Fourth year.
So he was in the.
Belushi quit to focus on
films,
and Aykroyd was in discussion with the producers as to whether he could stay and do Blues Brothers, or if he had to leave, and Aykroyd decided it was easier for him to leave because he wanted to basically half-ass SNL.
Yeah.
So he left at the end of season 4 with Belushi.
Yeah. Because then obviously after season 5 they basically rebooted the whole thing with a completely different cast.
Yes.
Then there was the Wilderness Years.
And then there was The Fire.
Yeah. So so he'd done 4 years, so quite a bit, and he was doing films and stuff around the same time. There was a special, I don't know if you've ever seen it, it's called The Things We Did Last Summer. They put like an hour special out of each cast member done like a fictional what they done that summer.
Oh right, no.
I used to have that on video as well. I can't remember what Aykroyd done in that. It was it must have been, wasn't after the first season, Bill Murray's in it, and Bill Murray just plays baseball. But there was a lot of, they were huge. There was I got somewhere a comedy album from the early years, from the first 5 years they put out, and it's just great. And it's Aykroyd for me. I'm glad we started with him because we'll probably do episodes on other cast members from that point. I mean, I think we've already got written down that we're going to do at least one of them this series. But picking the sketches, you could pick any sketch he was in, but the ones we've picked are where he's shining more, opposed to we could have just simply had the nerd sketch where he's the fridge repairman, bends over, the joke is you see his crack, because that's hilarious. And the way he does it different to what anybody else would have done.
Well, it's a superhero birthday party where he, as the Flash, he has the brilliant line of "I've just had some punch, I've just had some again." He's not moved.
Yeah. Brilliant.
He's not even like the main character I mean, Belushi steals that as the Hulk.
Oh yeah. And, Bill Murray is Superman.
Bill Murray is Superman.
Yeah, and Garrett Morris is Ant-Man.
Yeah. Oh, I speak to ants.
Yeah. Fantastic. So so he's 74 now.
Yes.
Still going strong. I briefly met him a couple of years ago to just at a signing, and his presence was. Then you could, it was, he was very friendly, and it was right at the end of the day. But it was, just a nice bloke, but charismatic's the word.
Yeah. I mean, we've not even talked about his business as well. Quickly, I mean, he started House of Blues, which at one point was the second largest music venue franchise in America.
Yeah.
He's got his Crystal Head vodka,
which is lovely.
It's pure. You need to hear him wax lyrical. If you ever get a chance to find Dan Aykroyd talking about how pure his vodka is, it's just beautiful. It's like he's writing a poem about grain alcohol. He imports tequila.
Yeah. And then he's done his TV stuff, the UFO shows and mystery shows and things like that.
He's a polymath.
Yeah.
I like that word, polymath. Second time I got that in.
Yeah, you've done well there. So... with future episodes, we will be talking about, things we won't be able to avoid getting into like the personal lives of some of the cast members. But it's nice to start on this one where I don't think there's any dirt. No,
I mean, even his, he was engaged to Carrie Fisher.
Yeah.
He proposed to her on the set of Blues Brothers.
Yeah.
And then he bought a house for both of them, and at the house, they decided, oh, it's not working out, and then split amicably.
Yeah. And and Lord Michael still loves the man, talks well about the man, and he rogered his wife roundly. Anyway, yeah.
The thing is, there's no dirt.
No.
There is. I do not believe there is any dirt. If there would have been, Chevy Chase would have brought it up. It hasn't.
The only dirt is that he's mates with Chevy.
Yeah, Chevy Chase would have left on a voicemail.
Yeah. Yeah, fantastic. So yeah. What else have we got to say? We got I haven't even timed how long we've recorded for.
No.
We were going to aim for about an hour. I have no idea.
I think we're getting close to that, I reckon. Yeah. So, I don't think there's any other way. It's just these. The epitome of, you think of I personally, if I think of an SNL cast member, he's one immediately comes to mind. It's him, Sadler, White Myers, like the Eddie Murphy, but we're only for a year. But they're probably the 4 biggest superstars that came out.
Yeah.
Of it.
Yeah, definitely, and he's still attached to it. Yeah, not officially, but he'll often pop up and he'll talk about it when they do the 50th. They'll do a proper anniversary show at some point. He'll be there.
He still comes back and does like impressions of politicians, which was his niche.
Yeah.
He was the first one who would do the impressions of the politicians on SNL.
His Nixon was great. Yeah, marvellous. So find us on Facebook and Twitter. That's what we need to say. Share with your friends, because we're making this podcast. Most people we know ain't got a clue what Saturday Night Live is.
That's what we do, because we're the only 2 people that can talk about this. So it's us talking to a microphone, because the microphone is the only one that will listen. And apart from you people.
Yeah. Hi, Mum. Yeah, so any feedback as well, I'll put the function on Spotify so you can message to Spotify, but comment and message us on we'll have Facebook and Instagram, yeah?
Yeah, we will,
We'll set them up soon. And anyone, we're open for suggestions on who to talk about. And just definitely get things talking. Ideally, we're looking for fellow English fans and American fans, and we can talk, because it's often different humours, but SNL, when you think of the early episodes, you had Peter Cook on there, members of Python on there, and I think they were very influencing each other. Yeah. You look at, say, the Ruttles, the Aykroyd's in that, isn't he?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of British humour and American humour is closer than what people think, especially when it was then this alternative side. Yeah, it's 50 years ago though. So.
Yeah. Just on that issue, we were talking about Python. So Eric Idle, who hosted 3 times during the period of the 4 years. People hosted a lot in those first 4 years, over and over and over again. Anyway, Eric Idle hosted 3 times, and he said that Dan Aykroyd would be the only one that would fit in with the Pythons. Yeah,
I've seen that quote, and I can see it as well. Yeah, because of his range.
Yeah.
And that was a rare quote that they didn't pay Eric Idle to say. So well, thank you all very much for listening. We're going to try to get an episode out every month.
Every month?
Yeah. So I don't know the dates and that, but follow us on the socials and we'll do that. And thank you all very much for listening.
Adios.
And farewell.
Farewell.